You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I got 11 people in chat. Fantastic. Can you guys hear us okay? A little bit of a sound check before we get started. I know people are excited about tonight. Hear me? Question mark. Crickets, what's up, guys? Where are you all at? Where are you at? This is the special behind the podcast pregame chat that you all get as those of you who come and join us live on YouTube before we get everything started. So I usually depend upon at least someone saying, "Hey, what's going on?" But we did have a pretty good start time, so we're fairly on schedule. Hey, there we go. Yes, check sound. Hi guys, fantastic. And then black and red. Good, excellent. All right, well. You guys know the drill. You guys have been with us for a long time this season and before. We are at the penultimate round for the 2021 season, which is nuts, absolutely nuts. So we'll be talking the player picks, a little bit of an echo, that's fine. Oh, that's strange. Doesn't usually happen. But no, we'll be talking about that. So I've got the social out on Reddit, got the social out on Discord. So if you all could do the great favor as always and just share that out, that would be much appreciated. And we've got everybody here, so we shall. I promise the discussion about body slamming will be kept to a minimum tonight, an absolute minimum, unless it is fantasy relevant. So maybe that should be a stat that gets tracked. All right, let's do this. Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of round 26, the penultimate round of the 2021 fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by Body Slams, because even The Rock could smell what Tim Malia was cooking. Actually, brought to you by the amazing Patreon community of the MLS Fantasy Insider and MLSFantasyBoss.com. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLS Fantasy Boss, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, our usual co-hosts, Blayne Riffle and Ashley Savage. How are you all doing tonight?
Doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing really good.
Good to have you as well. So a fun little thing that happened last week in our Twitter chats is Ashley sent out a picture of her son at the game and how he was trying to verify that Blayne was a Sporting Kansas City fan and he promised not to boo the team because of that. Which is fantastic based on what happened and based on the intro. But I told people before we started the show that we weren't going to get too much into that. But yeah, body slams, cards, Twitter and MLS is all aflutter with that. It's not fantasy relevant, except maybe the cards part. So maybe we'll have a slight touch on that, but we're not going to dig into that on this episode. But holy cow, when The Rock actually makes a comment about MLS, I'm all about it.
Sure.
Good. That's got to be good for the league. I mean, that's exposure.
That's right.
And
I'm all about it.
Sure. I'm gonna be a pity party for 1 second though and say, when you're promoting something as violent and you're not reprimanding it as violent, you're just here to be all pumped because a celebrity paid attention to your league. I don't love that for player safety. I love The Rock as much as anybody, but I don't like how MLS handled that if D'Amelio walks away with nothing.
We shall see. For a different episode, a different show, a different time, but because we are here to talk about round 26 and what we take it away from round 25. So let's start out by recapping our scores and some of our takeaways from round 25. Chat, let me know how you all did, and Blayne, how did your team do?
Honestly, not terrible considering I captained Zardes.
Oof.
I'm not in Champions League, so I'm kind of playing with some stuff, and I had to use my Zardes captain for the year. So I actually got one in because it doesn't look like he's playing the rest of the season. But I did go with Tati Anarango on the bench, so that was 30 points of my 90 right there. Overall, not terrible across the board. I think I fell into a few of the traps that other people did, like Nashville defense. Zimmerman just didn't pick up the bonus points for me. Um, had I gone with Fragapane instead of Zardes, that would have been an extra 10 points as my captain. That would have put me at a flat 100, which I'm not going to moan about making Zardes my captain on the last week I could. It's that time of the season. Overall, not a terrible week, all things considered. I'll live with it and just go on from here. And that actually includes, I don't know how I missed it. I plugged him on the show last week. And Bravo didn't even play for Portland. I guess he was injured out of nowhere. And so I took an extra did not play and still got a 90 on his Zardes captain. So I think overall I had a good week. If I was in Champions League, I would be really upset with this. But because I'm fighting just to try to stay top 100, I'm okay with this result.
And plus, you're contractually obligated to captain Zardes at least once.
Yeah.
That's just a little thing that most of you all probably don't know. It's just part of Blayne's just requirements as a host. That's what it is. Ashley.
Mine is to Captain Breck Shea. So I had something happen to me this week. You guys know this. We've talked about it. That has never happened to me before, where I made changes on my laptop and it didn't save. And when I pulled it up on my phone, 5 different things that I had done once lineups came out didn't save. And that before anybody says it wasn't user error, I hit save. I'm not. It's not one of those things. I know that I did. I have no idea if my laptop was no longer connected. Whatever. My captain pick changed. My striker picks changed. 2 of my midfielder picks changed. And those were all because of what I saw in lineups. So I missed out on Arango points. My captain ended up being a wash because I changed my captain from Mukhtar to Heel, and they both got the same amount of points. So I can't complain about that too much. But all in all, I think I lost about 18 points in changes that didn't save. But I got an 89, which is not the worst considering all the things that didn't save for me, but still really frustrating because I would have been over 100 if everything had saved the way it wanted, and I can't even complain about Captain Zardes, but I did have him. So that's just never happened to me, so it was really frustrating. But it's nice to know, I guess I would have done okay if technology had caught up with me.
Yeah, Shannon said her son had the same problem before, so that is definitely a rough break. Seeing some great scores in chat. 117 is the highest I've seen there. 113, 111. Yeah, had some fantastic scores. Oh, Patrick made a rookie mistake on his formation, and that cost him 10 points. Where was that a couple of weeks ago, Patrick? Where was that a couple of weeks ago? No, as for me, I ended up with 102 points. I was really pleased with the way everything went down. Thank you, bench. That's where I got a lot of that from. I went with the Mukhtar captain. I did end up going with Heel at the end. Some of that was just based on the lineup. And at Captain Mukhtar, that was fine. Again, I also had Fragapane, which would have gotten the 11. But if I had been bold and hadn't put him on the bench, I had Higuain on the bench, who came away with a 21, which was a nice little bump for me. I also had DK on the bench. And then I had Willis as the third guy that swapped in. I also had Gould on the bench, but he did not come in, which worked out, though. So, didn't have a lot of love from Nashville, but not a lot of love to find with clean sheets this round. So it would have been kind of rough if you were hunting for that. So
I got to shout out the guy that lives with me who got 128 points this week.
Because of course he does. What was it? Is this the week that I sent you some sort of? Was it this week or last week? No, it was, because I was like, I'm going to go with Higuain. Is that pretty, Spencer? I think that's our new thing. Did he captain him?
Started him. No, he.
Let's see. That would have been so Spencer.
Too far for him, yeah. But no, he had him. He started him. He didn't even put him on his bench. But yeah, I mean, 120. It's unreal. I'm proud of him.
I'm going to retroactive. That's if you captained Gutman last week. That's so Spencer. That's the new thing. That's our new. That's the fantasy term we've coined this year. If you do something absolutely bananas and it works out, that's so Spencer. That's what it is. Right there. But no, so a lot of great scores. At this point, with different people vying for Champions League positions, people vying for overall, people vying for head-to-heads, it's kind of hard to tell what the good score was. I was weak rank 711 with a score of 102. So I'm guessing that might have been a little bit below what some people were looking for. I saw some of those 100-teen scores. Maybe that's what you were looking for if you really wanted to advance or cut in. But I think if you got 90 or mid 90s and higher, I would think you would have a good week. You had a lot of the solid players who came in for you. Maybe you had some good, like I had Wagner on the bench. Maybe you had some good defenders that came through. So I think people in those mid 90s up to the low to mid hundreds, you likely had a good week and can be happy with your score.
Well, most of the chalk players, I would say, also got double digits this week.
Yeah.
The frags, the heel, a lot of the people that you pick up for a reason, but still. Did well instead of kind of busting out. Not Zimmerman, that got me too, but generally a lot of them hit.
And before we get to our takeaways, as was just pointed out in chat, yes, if you're listening to this show tonight, if you're listening to this podcast right now or whenever, or tomorrow, whenever you get to it, because I'm going to try to get this up as soon as possible. Games start Tuesday. Games start tomorrow. Games start today. You listen to this. Like this is a quick turnaround. We will touch on this again, but one game. It's just one game. It is just one game. So if you don't care about that, right. If you don't care about that, but we'll talk about that. But games do start Tuesday, so be aware. With that in mind, this is the final episode for takeaways since we only have one round left. Ashley, what kind of fantasy takeaways do you have from round 25?
Well, I know I'm going to get flack for this because of who I support as a club, but what is going on with Portland? This was very surprising to me. I liked Blayne's Bravo pick. Like, I thought that had good tread. Obviously, he got hurt, and didn't play at all, but I thought a Portland defender, I saw a lot of people pick up Steve Clark as a keeperoo. They got 5 goals scored on him in 2 games. They lost a 2-0 lead at home. You didn't see a lot of points out of a lot of their normal players. I think Yimi got a 13, and that was it. Fantasy-wise, they were not clicking this week like I think some people thought they might. So that was really surprising to me. And I don't know if it's the root for the underdog mentality, but holy Miami. I just really enjoyed, and I'm very sorry it came at your expense, but I just really enjoyed seeing them actually pull something off this week. I know that mathematically they're not eliminated yet, so maybe that's giving them some hope and drive. But that was just a big takeaway for me. And also talked about this with some of my other fantasy counterparts this week. Chicago scoring goals. Barrett getting back on the scoreboard. Did I say it wrong? Is it Barrett?
Barrett.
Thank you. I was just very surprised to see, not just them putting up as many goals as they did, but him getting on the scoreboard twice in 1 week was surprising. And then, it's too soon to say it in any super positive way, but Chicharito scored some goals. We haven't said that in a hot minute.
I had him.
He scored a goal a game, and he had a hilarious, dive for a yellow that was very Chicharito to me. But it's nice to see him back on the score sheet for fantasy implications. And then I stole it so Blayne couldn't, out-talk me on it. But Rui Diaz, he's training, but for fantasy, I don't like him for the rest of the season. I think you might see him next week, but he won't have been in full training for a while. He traveled because he was hurt. So even though he's there, I'm not super pumped on it. However, Nicolas Ladero did travel to LAFC, which is a team he tends to enjoy. I think it's a bold pickup, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. Without a real striker like Rui Diaz and just Bill Bruin and Freddie Montero, I'm interested to see if Nico actually gets on the pitch in time to make a fantasy difference. So
Rui's not there, and that's not fair, but at least you have the dancing bear.
Oh, I gotta submit that. Someone's gotta make that a thing.
That's awesome.
Blayne, what kind of takeaways did you have?
Yeah, I said it kind of last week, and I know it was more private to Ashley, but I was like, I'm not going to expect Rui Diaz back until the playoffs. And I think this week kind of shows it. Everybody was talking about a return in the weekend, play Sporting, go for the win. He's just now back to full training. I'm expecting cameo roles from him from now until the playoffs. Keep him healthy, keep him kind of fit, and then go with that. So that put what you want in that for Seattle picks. Same with Ladero coming back. I don't expect him to go full time for a while, but that means high rotation in the midfield and at the attackers. I know Montero and Bruin are not your regular picks, but you're going to see a lot more rotation here, and that could lead to some chemistry issues on the field too. Giving up goals if they're giving up the ball in the midfield. It just tread lightly with Seattle going forward, because I saw the games this week. They seem to be cooling off just a little bit. I know there's a ton of rotation. They have been getting good results with the rotation, but now it's kind of dropping off. Yes, it was Colorado and Sporting, who are 2 and 3 in the West. I mean, it was not a bad one, but Colorado looked really good in that game too. And Seattle's just, they don't seem to have the answers you would expect them to, given the way they played this season with some of their backups throughout the season. They seem to have lost their way just a little bit. Reid took him, so Reid gets all the credit for it. But Higuain, I told you so. I was on him last week. I didn't have it in me to take, but I love that double slate of games. If you took him, congratulations. That was fantastic. Reid gets all credit for taking him.
For betting against my team. That's what I get. Me and Gene. That's what it was this week.
Johnny Russell is on a 7-game goal streak. Can't underscore that enough when you're talking fantasy and just form. He's 7 straight is 7 straight. Got to be a guy on the radar. And then weird question I have, and chat can hit us up with this. How close is Arango to leading for the Golden Boot race? He's 5 goals back of Ola Kamara, but with the rate he's scoring right now, like how far off is he? Could he do this? Rui Diaz may not be playing. Ola Kamara is not scoring and hit a dry spell. Shallowy hasn't scored as much lately. Johnny Russell's coming into form. I mean, could Arango steal it?
So we have Ola with 17. Then we have a 3-way tie with Busco, Rui Diaz, and Shallowy with 16. Then Bo and Tati with 15. Then behind him, Chicharito and Krylik and Mukhtar with 14. Arango has 12.
Yeah,
so
no,
he would need to get a bunch.
He's got, but look at the way he's been scoring. And I say this is a fun question just because can he win the Golden Boot? But if we're talking a guy scoring this much late in the season to make the charge, I think he's kind of a set and forget type of player for these last 2 rounds. I think you just got to run with them. And I jumped on the bandwagon a while ago. I actually traded for him in draft right before he started going off, which has been huge for me. But I don't want anybody else to miss out on this. I think he's one of those guys you kind of have to take. He's back to the point where Vela was at one point. You just kind of have to have him because he's way too much of a chance to go off and get you 15 points a round. And anytime a guy's doing that, you'll take a 2 or a 3 every once in a while if it's a 15 most games.
Well, that plays into a question from chat who want to know more about what we think about the implosion from DC United. So we haven't been seeing some of that goal pace from Ola. This week, DC is on a double home, so they've got some more chances there. But what's your take on DC for the remainder of the season with a double home game this week and then finishing up everything next week on the road at Toronto?
I honestly don't know what's up with them. This is a team that, on paper at the start of the season, I liked the way they were built. I liked the way they looked. I thought that the players they had could really get a lot done. We've seen some good results against solid teams. It's not been bad results. They are a little streaky in the goal scoring department at times, which hurts. Probably a little more streaky than the numbers have led on, because when they stop getting penalties, they stop doing quite so well. I know Ola Kamara has scored 8 penalties himself, and I don't know if any others have been scored by other players when he hasn't been on the field. But that's when you start talking. Let me pull up the standings page because I'm looking at some of the recent results, and I think this last one was kind of an outlier. New York City is an attacking team that, if they get on the same page, can do this to almost any club. but when you're scoring so many from penalties and everything else, it really makes you wonder. I mean, they've got 51 goals, and if we're assuming kind of safely 10-ish of them, 20% of their goals are from the penalty spot. That's a really high number. So I think it inflates what we expect from them a little bit. But I don't know. They're just really in a funk right now, and it hasn't been all bad from them. It's just they're not getting the wins, and when they are getting goals, it's not the ones we expect. They're kind of doing the Houston thing. You've got Areola, you've got Gressel, you've got Kamara, you've got a couple other guys that have scored for them this year. They can score by committee, and even when they're getting them in bunches, it's kind of getting spread out. But yeah, I don't know exactly what's up. I wish I could watch a little bit more of them, but they're massively underperforming. I wish we had Ryan here to tell us how their numbers were compared to their expected goals. Whether their expected goals are up and they're just not converting, or if they've been overperforming their expected goals all season, and now they're kind of coming back to earth.
Well, Ashley, do you have anything to throw
I mean,
in there?
I kind of don't. I haven't been able to watch them as much. I've been only able to see a lot of their fantasy points and the results and things like that. But I have to be honest, for a good stretch of the season, when I look at the lineups and look at the results, I was always surprised, if that makes sense. Like, I wasn't sure how these pieces were fitting together outside of Ola. So I would tend to think that the result this weekend was a bit of an off result. But DC United this season has just been a team I haven't been able to figure out. So I don't know. Maybe they are, running out of gas. Maybe this is a one-off. They're not a team that I ever heavily went to outside of like a Gressel, an Ola, an Andy Nahar. So I don't know how not viable those players are this week. I think they're a pretty decent shout playing Red Bull at home. 2 home games, Columbus 2. But the way that their stats were this past weekend makes it tough to pick them back up.
I think the answer is pretty easy with DC for me, and it just comes down to injuries. They've been a team that's had to deal with a lot of injuries throughout the season. They started the season this way. They still have some people lingering, and I think that's been a big part of it. The math is, I don't know if it's in their favor. They're just a couple of points behind. They could still make it, so I don't know if they've imploded. I think they've got a hard game this week against Red Bulls. They have some good defensive prowess there. I think it's slowed down for Ola Kamara, but a lot of it I think is just injuries. So I think it's just the way the pendulum swings. And they've hit a rough patch, and that game against DC did not, or against New York City did not help. And the game against New England was just tough. That's a tough home game. They're a tough away team. They're Supporters Shield winners, so New England's a tough team. So that's just what it comes down to. So I don't want to say don't read into it too heavily. I'm not targeting a lot of DC guys myself, but it just is. I think it just is what it is with injuries and just some schedule. The other takeaways I had before we move on, I want to touch on one thing what Ashley said, and I think that some people are still sleeping, putting down, underestimating Vancouver. I think that's part of the reason is that they're not this pushover team from the beginning, and Portland saw that. I mean, they have some skill. It's not like they're this hunkered down bunker, zero clean sheet kind of, but they've got some offensive talent. They've got some defensive ability at times. So they have pieces in play, and I don't think you can expect Vancouver to be a pushover as we were and shouldn't for the remainder of this season. And then also, as I already mentioned, I know last week Gene was talking about betting against New York City for everything, going all in with Atlanta and betting against these guys. And I just had a huge laugh seeing those 6 goals that New York City put up against DC, because I was like, Gene. I kept thinking about Gene the whole time. But the fans' takeaway is Tati had a great score, and that's exactly why we've talked about Tati all this season. Is these underlying stats can be bread and butter, and they're the reason you look to these guys from week in to week out.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is enough for our recaps. Let's move on to our housekeeping section, and we're going to be mentioning when this round starts. All right, housekeeping. First, congrats to our league winners. One more round to go, everybody. MLS Fantasy Boss and the Reddit League. Nawajawa still leading that. Discord, Feeling Kinda Rad is in the lead. And then over at Patreon, a lead change. MLS Fantasy Stats, Ryan is back on top right there. Moving over to our head-to-heads, we are in the playoff period of all of the 3 head-to-heads that I run. For some reason, I was not able to view the upcoming matches for the Discord playoff, but there should be a semifinal going on right now between the top 4 teams after last week from the 8. So good luck to you all who are playing. I couldn't view who you were for some reason. Over in the Patreon League, we have a bunch of Discord of great supporters and names that we've mentioned throughout this year. We have Jason Morris, one of our top supporters, who is going up against Paul Tomerdal, and that should be a good match. And then Ted Firestone, another longtime supporter of the show, versus Ryan Walker. So good luck to you all as you play to get to that final spot. And then over in the MLS Fantasy Insider Hosts Invitational League, this is coming down to a battle of titans and myself. But we have Matt Pollard versus me in this semifinal round, which Matt will be our guest for the final episode, the final preview episode next week. So that'll be a fun one. But yeah, Matt and I are going head to head in the Host Invitational, and then Skylar is going head to head with Black and Red, one of the longtime Discord members, show supporters, former champion. So we've got former champions going head to head right here. So like I said, big games in the Host Invitational, big players, and myself, who are all seeing if we can get a spot at the final. So yeah, Matt and Skylar are 1 and 2 going into this, so it's going to be crazy. As I previewed at the top of the show, or near the top of the show, the start time for round 26 is Tuesday, October 26th at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with LAFC versus Seattle. Now, it's important to know that LAFC is a single game week team this week, and Seattle is a double game week team this week. So if you have any shenanigans or a ruse that you're planning on, keep that in mind. But if you want to have players from those 2 teams, you need to have them set by 10:30 p.m. on Tuesday, which is tomorrow if you're listening tonight, or today if you're listening on Tuesday. And if it's not Tuesday, you still have time to do things with your team, but just not for those guys. So not for LAFC and Seattle. So just be sure you get things sorted out by Tuesday is your best bet. This is a big double game week. As far as double game weeks go, we have Seattle, San Jose, New York Red Bull, Miami, Toronto, Sporting Kansas City, DC United, Nashville, Colorado, Philadelphia, Minnesota, New York City FC, Columbus, LA Galaxy, Atlanta, Real Salt Lake, Dallas, Cincinnati, and Orlando. So a lot of good options there. As far as the double home teams, we have DC United, Atlanta, and Dallas. For your double away teams, you have Colorado, Nashville, San Jose, and LA Galaxy. And then just so we say them, the single game week teams that are left are LAFC, New England, Chicago, Portland, Vancouver, Houston, Austin, and Montreal. If you are looking for switcheroo options, you have a couple different ways to approach this. You can either load up early so you are sure to see a first lineup and have those players be listed as did not play, and you can definitely get your Aroos going how you want them, so you can look to LAFC if you want to have guaranteed players who are not playing based on seeing the lineup. If you want to wait later so you can preview more scores and maybe get some options of switching some players in, you're probably going to look at Houston because they play the latest in the round, but you may just be just saying whatever by that time. So, but those are your 2 strategies you can look at. You can go with the early game with LA, you can go with the late game with Houston, however you would like to do, or a combination of both. As far as suspensions and injuries go, I'm going to turn it over to Blayne, and a quick caveat, I might disappear at some point to deal with Baby Roo.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I don't know that we've even highlighted on the show yet. Congratulations to New England. They've won the Supporter Shield. That does have fantasy implications at this point. You've got some stars on there who have had some injuries throughout the season. Bruce Arena's not a guy to rest his players too much, but we've got 2 weeks, 4 games left for a lot of these teams. I think they're on the single, so I think they've got 3 games left. You may see some rest and some rotation here. You may see guys playing 45, 60 minutes just to stay fresh and then come off. I could see Heel doing that quite a bit in these last 3 games. Get him run out there, get him stretch his legs, let him play, and then pull him off. So just watch for that. Don't bank on some of those home run hitters coming out and playing a full 90. It's just, we've seen it. I don't think Arena's the guy that's going to rest his players outright and just say you're not playing. I think he's going to try to run those guys out there. But just keep that in mind when you're making your picks, especially with them being a single game week option. Discord chat was really quick to point it out tonight. Vela is no longer on the injury report for LAFC. That changes the complexion of this team, and I don't know if it's good or bad all the time. We've speculated on that at different times throughout the season. If he is healthy and they need to make a playoff push, which they are currently not in the playoff picture, they are 3 points behind Vancouver in 7th place. Vancouver's in 7th place, and their level on games played, they're ourselves in 8th with a game in hand, so they could leapfrog it they could leapfrog Vancouver. But I mean, LAFC really has to get past 2 teams here at the end of the season to make it to the playoffs. So you may see a lot more of Vela, or you may not see him at all, because the chemistry they've had and the goal scoring run they're on without him right now is insane. Just keep that in mind. He is potentially healthy. We've got some yellow card notes in here. Tyler was great to get some of this out to us early today. Joao Paulo is suspended for a game. Looks like we've got Mukhtar and Nathan for San Jose, Arujo, and I'm going to assume that's Atlanta's midfielder, not the LA defender who we never take.
I think it's the LA defender. I'll double check while you're talking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are guys who have served their yellow card during their double game week.
Okay. Mukhtar, Nathan, Arujo, Metner, and Polster already served theirs, so they're safe. Dahome may be suspended. Watch for that. He picked up one. Gasper is suspended. We've got Lucho Acosta, Moreno for Atlanta, and Chofis for San Jose are still on the watch list. Wagner is probably a new addition to the potential yellow card list as well. So keep an eye on those. Those are kind of our warning players that we've got. I don't know if anybody else has picked one up. The notes we have are kind of choppy. And then Cruz for Cincinnati picked up a red on the weekend, so he's out for the next game. And other than that, I think we're all pretty much back to normal.
Yeah, and the Wagner one was something that people went back and forth on a lot this week. If he was one away, or is he at the 4 where he needs to wait for the good incentive, or is he one away from getting to the 4? And I believe the ultimate decision going back through was one of his red cards was a double yellow, I think, or he got a yellow then a red, but the math works out, and he is definitely at 4 where he is still waiting for the good. I've just gone blank. The good behavior incentive. There we go. So yeah, but definitely Wagner is someone who is on watch. All right, I think that's all. Yeah, be sure to check out the Discord channel to see what the latest updates are. You can find that in the pin at the top right-ish corner of there. Head over to mlsfantasyboss.com/Discord if you want to check that out. That's the easiest way to become a part of the Discord community and have access to a lot of the chat and tips and heads up and the weekly poll that comes out. It's a really great way to be involved and stay up to date. And we'll be going after the season, so you can just have friends to chat with as well. So head over for all of that. And then also, Blayne had mentioned the standings. As we mentioned last week, I'll put it in the description as well again this week. If you'd like to, keeping up with who has a chance of making it and who doesn't is important. And you can head over to MLSsoccer.com to see their rankings. You can also head over to the site I like to go to often, which is 538, and you can look for their MLS Club Soccer predictions, and they will show you just their percentage chances for someone making the playoffs, making the first bye round, making the supporter shield, so you can really kind of maybe even see if you can gain any insights from that as well. But it's fun. It's some fun stats and charts and colors, and things to look at and consider when you're picking your players. But enough of that. Let's talk about the actual players who we are looking at for round 26. All right, now let's talk player targets for round 26. But first, some promising games. Ashley, what are you looking forward to?
I like both Atlanta games this week. I feel like we've been here before. I feel like we say this every time they have a double home game, but I really do like both of their home games this week. For me, this is kind of a let up on Atlanta. I know what we said about Miami scoring goals and stuff, but still, to come into Atlanta, I like that matchup. And then I like them playing Toronto, another team that just looks tired and bad to me right now. On that same page, I like Philly at Toronto. I know it's going to Canada, but it's not that far from Philadelphia. It's not a ton of travel. And I think that Philly are in good form and Toronto is not. I like LA going to Sporting. I think that should be a great game to pick up some points from Sporting players. I don't really think that LA is going to bring a lot into that game. And then I like Nashville at Orlando. There's something about that seems like some good fantasy points to me. Orlando is pretty close to clinching, or did they clinch this? They clinched this weekend, right? But they're just such a crazy team to watch, especially from a fantasy perspective. And if Nashville doesn't rotate, which, throws a lot of things off when they do, I think that could be a good game as well.
Blayne, what about you?
Yeah, I like the Atlanta games with Ashley, but I think I like the Philly set better. It's just you've got two teams right here that have a juicy double set, and when we talk about it, Philly's playing the exact same set that Miami just played. It's Toronto and FC Cincinnati, and a Miami team that has not been scoring enough goals lately dropped 8 on these two teams combined, and now we get to see Philly go against them. Like, that's just I don't know how you can't highlight that as probably the best setup for a double game week you could see. I like Red Bulls versus DC. I think that's just going to be a fun one. That's a pseudo rivalry. That's an old 96 rivalry coming back. Red Bull seem to be finding some form. DC just got shelled. It'll be fun to see how they play. If you're gambling on DC being a little bit worse off right now, loading up on Red Bulls for that one may not be a bad one. And then I kind of like the FC Dallas versus Austin game. And with Dallas being on a double home, that's just a really juicy matchup to get into for game 2. One of my players has been in a good run of form lately, and that matchup just looks like a good spot to continue it. So I'm hoping that one doesn't burn me, because I'm thinking about loading up right there.
Yeah, you all touch on a lot of the ones that I'm looking at as well. A few others. I'm looking forward to those RSL games. I think there's some points there. They're pushing for a spot in the playoffs, and so I think that could be some good point potential. The Philadelphia game is awesome. The Atlanta games, I think, are awesome. There's some great point potential right here. And I'm even looking forward to the New York City games, because I think that has a great shot at some defensive points. So I think there's definitely a lot of options you have for fantasy points. And you guys have touched on a lot of them. So no big differences there. Let's move on to keepers, defenders, and clean sheet chances, starting with consensus picks. Ashley.
Yeah, I think we all put Lennon and Wagner on our teams. I think you could, if you're trying to get creative, do a version of those two from those same teams. But we pick them up for their offensive bonus potential, along with the shutout potential for this week. So those were the two consensus picks that we all three thought would make our teams.
Yeah. Blayne, who else were you considering, or is there anything else you want to add to why you went with Lennon and Wagner?
I like Wagner's just been so offensive this season, given that. And I know we said he's on yellow card warning, and I know that news came out after we'd all kind of put our names in the list, but none of us went in and switched it either. Toronto has been that bad that I will take the risk on Wagner in that first game, picking up a yellow and getting suspended for the Cincinnati game, because I like the way they play. I like the way the team's set up. I don't like the way Toronto plays. I think that single game floor for Wagner is good enough to keep him on the off chance he doesn't pick up a yellow, which I'd say he's about 50-50 whether he's going to get a yellow or not. And so if he doesn't, you get the second game and you get to see another score. If he does, I still think that game is worth going at. And I don't see a ton of other double game week options I really want to target as heavily. And you may go safety if you're in Champions League, if you're up there in the points where you want to be, if you're in the prizes. Yeah, don't take Wagner. Take somebody like a Fontas, who is going to get you a more consistent points. But if you're trying to make some moves, I think Wagner's got it. And on that line of thinking, really, Atlanta and Philadelphia are my 2 clean sheet shouts this week. I think they've got probably the best odds for it, and you're picking up that double game week from both of them. They're playing well. They're playing against some of the weaker offenses, and I like that. So I'm torn on my goalkeeper pick right now. I'm either going with whoever LAFC runs out, which I think is Blackman right now, or Fry for that Tuesday night game just to see a score. I think you're crazy if you don't do it. You've got a single game on Tuesday. You have to pick one of those goalkeepers. But then you're looking at your primary keeper in the starting role if one of those if your pick doesn't get the clean sheet. And I'm torn on Guzan and Blake at this point. I think I like Atlanta's clean sheet shouts better, but I'm also curious if I want to double up on the Atlanta attack, meaning I don't take Guzan, because I do have Lennon and I don't think I'm dropping Lennon. I think he's probably one of the better defenders to have for offensive potential. So I'm kind of leaning towards Guzan as the better keeper, but it may end up being Blake just because I want that extra Atlanta attacker at the final moment. But I think you're fine with either one of those. And then my third defender, because I'm running 2 scrubs, is Hollingshead. He's back to the Hollingshead we used to love, that was a defender playing out of position and racking up offensive bonus points. He's scored a couple of goals lately. I just think he's back, and that Austin matchup is just a great one for him to get forward and really get involved. So if I had to be pressed to say my best group, it's going to be Guzan, Lennon, Hollingshead, and Wagner this week, just to sum up who I've got. But there is some room for flexibility depending on what you're at, or if you want to double up on Atlanta attackers.
Now, let's point out in chat that Andre Blake does have a red dot in his name. I do not know why he has that red dot in his name, so that's definitely one to keep an eye on if that is something that you're interested in.
Patrick just said he's available. The app is always behind.
There we go.
He plays for Jamaica, so he does do some of the international, and they don't always get those updated in time.
Is that still from the Jamaica game? Jeez.
I don't know. They're always slow.
At Skylar. That's all I got to say. Just at Skylar. All right, Ashley, who about you?
Yeah, I'm considering a keeper this week, but I kind of said the same thing when we all talked. I might just start a keeper, but I'm struggling with, and I know it'll sound like I'm jumping ahead, but this is my reason why. I'm struggling with which keeper between Guzan, Sean Johnson, and Billy. I also assumed it was Blake. I ignored the red dot. Because I want 3 field players from both of those teams, all 3 of those teams. So I'd like to double up on middies and have Lennon from Atlanta. I want Priz, Wagner, and Montero from Philly. I want Tati, Chanel, and Maxi for NYCFC. So it's going to come down to who I start is going to come down to which field player I feel like I can part with. I'm leaning towards Brad Guzan. I think any of them are great options. I don't always agree with Blayne when he says that you should take someone from LAFC in Seattle just to see, because it's a single game, because I don't think that matchup is great for shutouts. So I don't know that it's great to just bite at an apple because it's there. LAFC are scoring goals Seattle's not scoring as many goals as normal, but they tend to go into that stadium and produce. If you look at the stats, if you look at the history, no matter who they bring down there, it happens. So I don't love chomping at that game, but to the point that Blayne was trying to make, if you don't, then basically you're going to have to do what I'm saying, which is just pick a keeper, because there's not a lot of wiggle room in any of these double game week windows that I think is even meritable. I mean, you could do someone from the 7:30 games, and then there's games that don't start until 10, but those 4 teams are Portland, San Jose, Vancouver, and Minnesota, which are teams that I don't necessarily think are great to choose from either. And I don't enjoy any of the single game week matchups as well. So I can see going, whoever LAFC has as a keeper now. It's really rotated. That's something I don't like about it either. Or Stephen Fry with a somewhat struggling Seattle defense. But I don't know that that's what I will do. I think I'll just pick one of those 3 keepers, Guzan, Johnson, or Blake, and just roll with them.
And see, actually, I want to go. My point on that is, let's just assume the best and the worst here. Your LA Seattle keeper gets a clean sheet. You get 8-9 points right there. You just lock it in and you're done. You don't take the risk of okay. Blake may see 2 games. Guzan may see 2 games, or as you pointed out, hey, if I get an 8 from an LA keeper in that first game, I've now got 3 field players from both Philadelphia and Atlanta, and I don't have to choose my keeper. I mean, you're free and clear at that point to do what you want. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to use up an LAFC spot that you weren't going to be using anyway.
Sure.
Because outside of Arango, you're not taking anybody else from LAFC this week.
Sure.
Why not throw them on your bench and just grab your double game week keeper that you're going to play regardless? You get to see a score. Worst that's going to happen is you're going to lose $500,000 of your value, which at this point doesn't matter at all. Like, it's see a score just to be safe. And if you get a good one, great. If you don't, you weren't planning on it anyway, so you're not out anything.
Yeah, that's
my logic there.
Yeah. I see the logic. I just don't even know for me if it's worth it because of what that matchup is. But I understand the logic completely and agree with it.
No, perfect. I don't have to get into that because you guys have already covered it. But no, that's what Shannon pointed out in chat, is that she's struggling because all of those teams play at the same time, and that's exactly the problem. All 3 of those teams you're looking at, they all start 7:30 on Wednesday, and that's going to be really tough for balancing because it's Seattle has the slightly better percentage chance of a clean sheet in that game, but who knows what happens if Vela comes back, or if Rui's out, or if there is more rotation, just waiting for something against LA Galaxy at the end. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, those are both teams in their conference, though. So those are both important points. So that's a big toss up, but that is the road game. So it's definitely a scratcher. I'm looking at the same people right now. I have it on Sean Johnson. Most would be to see what would happen with Chicago, Miami. I am on the fence, though, definitely looking at Atlanta, because I like that probably slightly better, that Miami-Toronto combo, because Chicago did get a little bit of bite back to them, and I'm contributing most of the bite that Miami had to playing against Cincinnati. So other than that, as far as defender options go, you guys have covered a lot of them. I also agree with Chanot as a great option for defender. I mean, you can look at some of those New York City players, and I think he just has a good consistency with the kind of points production. Some of the other guys, they've just mentioned in chat, Amundsen was someone who I've seen mentioned. He does usually sit. Point production, his floor isn't as high, and so that's what I like about Chanot. It's better. We mentioned how DC was kind of in a slump. You could look at DC this week. They have 2 home games. I'd mostly be banking on the DC game. New York got a bit of a bite too. Sorry, not DC. The Columbus game with Jossie out, to see how that impacts their attack. You would probably expect Zillerau to step back up. New York Red Bulls have shown they can score as well, so I'm a little hesitant with that, but you could look for a DC player. There's been some rotation there as well, so you just want to check and see who's starting. That would probably be more like my 4th or 5th defender team to look to. So someone I'd probably cut for some switcheroo bait right there. Of course, you can look at Nashville if you still want to bank on those double away games. I don't like the Orlando one as much as I like the Cincinnati one. So betting against Cincinnati there for Nashville if you want to pick whoever's starting. I think Romney's probably the safer pick right now, just from some bonus point production. But whoever's there, you can look and see just who you want to in that first game. That's what's nice about them playing Cincinnati in the first game is as you can see that lineup and not have to worry about those rotations. Other players I'll just throw out there for people to think about. You can of course go with Gutman. He's been a solid player, did very well as a captain for people in the past, even on the home and away rotation. He has good bonus point potential. You could look at Fontas. I find him still more of an average bonus point producer. He's not quite up there with some of those fantastic guys who tend to, like Wagner is a guy who consistently gets these high bonus points, pops up there. I don't see Fontas on that level, but he's a name that's right there. Antonio Carlo over at Orlando should be, I think he served one of his suspensions this past double game week for them. He's been a good bonus point producer, definitely an option there. You could look at Nathan, but 2 San Jose games on the road and him on a card watch. I'd be really worried about Nathan getting a card. And then if you wanted to follow points, Dallas does have 2 home games. Hollingshead did get a goal. I don't think Lightning will strike twice, but Hollingshead is a very offensive player, and you could have some potential of bonus points from him. RSL is an okay game if you want to look at that, but they're also going up against Austin, and that's probably the better chance for bonus points for a Dallas player if you're looking at defense right there. I think that covers a lot.
Couple you missed that I
Sure.
think just need to be highlighted because I deal with them for draft more so. I think we got to highlight Colorado. Rosenberry for attack, Wilson for kind of a more steady defender. That second game at Houston isn't a terrible shout for them if you're looking for a double game week guy. Their first game isn't the greatest.
Yeah.
Playing New England, but on the road to New England, I mean, it's a double road game, but if you're looking for something a little different, something a little out there, trying to get some differentials, Colorado's got to be kind of in the list. They've got some guys that have been doing it. Abubakar, if he's healthy and playing, not doing something crazy. I mean, they've got some good bonus point producers there as well, and a decent clean sheet shout.
My only problem with that is, in all reality, you're looking at maybe scrubbing at least one defender. So you're looking at 3 to 4 defenders, and I definitely like Philadelphia's lineup of against Toronto and Cincinnati better than Colorado's double away game. I like Atlanta's lineup of Miami and Toronto better than I like Colorado's double away game. And I like some of the consistency that we get with Chanot better than Colorado's double away game. I mean, they're playing against Miami. Chicago gives up goals as well, but there's a chance for a clean sheet there. So I just don't know if Colorado gets that high for me. He definitely a great differential shot. Don't want to squash that, but that's why I'm not looking at the Colorado. Is just because I'm just not sure about how they stack up against some of those other guys. Let's move on now to our midfielders. Ashley, what's our consensus?
Atlanta. And that's about it for all 3 of us. All of us are looking at either Moreno or Barco. Moreno on the yellow card watch, I think it's pretty possible. I don't know if I think it's probable. Barco sat out because he had a red card, so I think choosing either has merit to it. I can see a lot of people doubling up this week. I don't know that I'll go that route, but these are the types of games where you've seen that a lot in the past. But our general consensus picks are Moreno or Barco. And then to add to that, I like Maxi Morales this week. He's not producing the same types of points the last couple rounds as I would have expected, but I still like him with these lineups. I like him going into playoffs. I like Mukhtar. I can see why you wouldn't, but I still do. And then I like Rusnak this week. We're going to talk about Krylak. I see the Krylak. They've kind of gone back and forth this season, but looking at some of the stats and looking at some of the matchups, I'm a little more drawn to Rusnak than Krylak. I think there's a lot of other good midfielders that you can look at this week. Midfielders in general are, I think, the ones I'm having the most trouble fitting into my team. I also like Monteiro from Philadelphia. We haven't been able to pick him in a while because he was leaving and then he didn't. Whatever that whole fiasco is, I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point. But I like him this week because, like Blayne said earlier, I really like those Philly matchups. So I'm going to give him a shout this week and see if it pays off.
Blayne.
Yeah, I'm kind of Team Barco right now as I put my lineup together on the Atlanta picks. I think you could go any two of the three that they have with Moreno and Araujo there. They've all been hitting consistently lately. I don't think you'd be bad taking both of them. I'm saying I'm leaning Barco, which makes me nervous that Moreno's really going to go off. But I think Barco plays better when they're out there together. I feel like he's had the better run. So that's one of those, watch the owned percentages. Maybe if you're looking for differential, go for the one that's least owned. I'm back on Fragapane. I like the matchups. Vancouver is getting better. I think Vancouver's scoring goals. I don't think their defense is quite there yet. But I really like the Minnesota's chances of getting at least a goal or two against Sporting. It's just the way those teams play. It's the way that matchup goes. He's going to be able to exploit some space on the wing. I like him this week for both of those. I want the RSL coverage as well. I'm kind of leaning Krylock because it's the point chasing one. He's in better form right now. I would love it if Rusnak goes off. That would really help my draft team. And I've kind of stuck with Rusnak probably a little too long, knowing that the form's with Krylock, because I've been trying to pull for those draft points. But I think I want the RSL coverage. I'm in on one of the Philly midfielders. I want to see who starts and how they line up that first game. It's either Gazdag or Monteiro. Gazdag just got a brace, which is hard to ignore. And Monteiro really hasn't been getting on the score sheet since he came back. The bonus points are starting to be there. I think it's only a matter of time as they get back to playing together. And this is a double game week set that just saw Miami score 8 goals. I don't think you can understate how important that is for Philly to get back to scoring ways and get some of these midfielders involved. So I want to see what the rotation looks like for the midweek game, but I am going to go with the Philly midfielder. Whoever starts of those two probably, but they've got some younger guys that have been playing really well that could step up. And then kind of a surprise one, it's a guy I've been waiting for to come back. A guy I've liked off and on this season, but he got hurt and then fell out of favor, and I just don't know. But Caceres Jr., I think, is the midfielder that Red Bulls have been missing. He has got a 12 and a 13 in his 2 starts since coming back. Huge potential. I love the matchups this week. I think this is one of those chances where he could really step up and shine. Montreal's defense is good most of the time, but I like the way the team's playing. Red Bulls look much better in attack with him out there. DC just gave up 6 for the midweek game, so the midweek game looks good. I don't know. I think I'm just going to try to ride that bubble. I've been looking for a Red Bull midfielder to really step up, and now that he's back, I love the way Red Bull's playing out of the back. I love the way their defenders are scoring bonus points, and I think it's just going to translate all to this. And he's been that focal point in the midfield, and I think he's going to be able to find at least another goal this week. So I'm going to ride with him and just see what happens. But it's nice to have a Red Bull midfielder that you can actually pick for once.
Yeah, you guys have covered a whole lot of them. I agree, of course, Moreno, Barco, but I think Patrick makes a very good point about Barco, how he is rested because he did not play in that second game, and so there will be maybe some more legs there fired up from the last red card with the dust up, as he put it, with Toronto. But then Araujo, I think, is actually a very good one. If you're going to go with 2 of those attacking players, you could have some choices this week. I'm also on Krylock if you're going to go with RSL. I just like, you're very much true actually with Krylock Rusnak. That's been the conversation all year. I kind of fall down on Krylock this week, though RSL is probably on my fringe of if I do or don't want RSL this week, but I do like the potential. Saw Gressel mentioned in chat. Yeah, I like him as an option. He's done really well with assists this season. Could have some potential this week as well. Other players, Montiero, I'm on the fence with. I will probably go with him just because of the matchup, but his ceiling's been a little weird since he's come back. But I do like that. I think we have to talk about Colorado at this point. Price is always a guy who seems to have a decent floor, but is he out or was he out last week? There was something with Price.
I think he served the yellow card.
Served it. Okay. You can look at him. I don't know. Or other Colorado midfielder options. Perhaps you'd want that, but you can kind of copy and paste what I said about defenders. I think there's some other guys I like better, but I'll throw them out there as an option because they can produce. I'm not quite sure about the New York City midfielders. They tend to share points and score around, and Maxi's been a little hot and cold as well. So I could see myself not necessarily needing or feeling like I need a New York City midfielder, especially if I go with Tati as a forward. I think that would be yes, Tyler from chat. He who shall not be named. No, I don't have anything wrong with saying Barrios. I just don't pick Barrios. But yeah, I don't know if I would feel like I need a New York City midfielder if I have Tati as that coverage for those guys. Because I like a lot of the midfielders. There's some solid options. I think that's someplace where you could make a concession. To go with some more variety, if you would like. And I think just because we have to mention it, because what's the show if we don't mention it, is a single game week heel worth it at home against Colorado?
It depends on the lineup, right?
It would have to.
Bruce Arena doesn't care about your fantasy team. So when they subbed in Orlando, it's the New England fantasy points that we're used to. But depending on who they start against an out-of-conference Colorado, no? Right? Like, and I'm not just saying if he doesn't start. I'm saying, like, if Bo and Buxa don't start, or Bo or Buxa don't start, is it worth it?
Here's my thing. They've clinched the Shield, and I know we shouldn't put too much stats in this, but Nashville's leading the league in clean sheets with 13. Right behind them is Colorado with 12. Colorado, and this is why I shouted them even as a road defense, they are still one of the stronger defenses in the league, even on the road. If New England was on a double, I would say, yeah, you could take them. But I wouldn't trust New England playing against Colorado with the potential for rotation. I can't do it. I can't take heel. And really, I don't see any single game week options I really like this week. I think the 2 bites at the apple is worth so much more because there's not the names we've been going with are playing doubles. I don't see any singles. And Heel's numbers have been good. I'm not gonna trash Heel for not playing well, but Heel's numbers aren't the early season MVP numbers that we got used to seeing. He's hitting double digits. I'm pulling him up right now. He's hitting double digits. He got a 13 and a 14 lately, but he's also got a 5 and a 7 in there with an 11. I mean, he's hitting those double digits, but we're not seeing the 15s, the 18s, the consistent 10s that we want. He's been up and down a little bit since coming back. Or no, sorry, I'm on the wrong part of the schedule. Yeah. Oh, he's only got 1 double digit in the last 5 weeks. I was looking at it before the injury. Yeah. Since then, he's not hitting those double digits. He's not doing heel things. I think he's still great. But, I mean, even his 10's got a goal in it. So, I mean, he only got 5. It's just, Heel's not the heel he was before the injury. I don't want to say he's cooling off. I just think it's a little bit conservative. He hasn't played quite the same minutes. Just protecting him. We should see him back in the playoffs, but I wouldn't trust a heel against a good defense like that.
I think the only other shout you could possibly have for a single game week midfielder might be Yimmy. He's probably been the most consistent there. They are playing against San Jose, which has struggled at times. So if you were doing the weird keeper thing we were talking about, you might look at Portland this week potentially as a late keeper. But I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But if we're looking at a single game week person, I think we had to talk about Heel. I agree with everything you say about not wanting that. And I'm a little turning around on Colorado as far as maybe they would be my 5th player for instead of DC. Based on that lineup 100%. But I think also if you wanted a single game week player, which I don't think he would make my cut at all based on the other quality we have, but I think Yimmy would be one of the other names that I would at least mention of if we're talking single game week people. But we're not talking about single game week, people. We're talking about forwards for round 26. So let's talk about who we like for this. And the consensus pick, Ashley?
Tati and Shabilko. I think we all wrote Tati first, and not just because of the game he just had. These matchups scream Tati. And then, like we've already said a couple times, the Philly matchups, their games this weekend look good. The only striker I feel like have hardly ever had, and at least I've had this season, is Frisb. So those are our two consensus picks, and then Blayne and I will fight about the third one.
Oh yeah. My third one in my roster right now is Johnny Russell. 7 straight goals in 7 straight games. Matchups that are favorable to them. I don't trust the LA defense that much. Minnesota, it's at Minnesota. That's a tough game, but this is one that's seen a lot of goals lately. This gets really heated. This is a prime matchup for Russell to really make something happen. I think when you're dealing with it right now, 7 straight games with a goal puts Russell on top of the Russell versus Shallowy debate for now. Shallowy has cooled off a little bit. He also went and did internationals and then came back and rested after that. Maybe picked up a slight knock in training just from all the extra stuff going on. So, a little bit there. But if you want to go for a single game week guy, this is your spot to grab a single game week guy. And Arango versus a potentially rotating Seattle team. Defense in the midweeks is always a little interesting with Seattle. Paolo is out, so we'll have to see what's going on there. Like, Arango's your single game week guy if you want one this week. That's your option to take, and it's mostly because he's been in form, and you can throw him on your bench with the first game, see the score, and if you don't like it, you can pivot to something else. It's real easy to make it work.
Well, and they're fighting for playoffs too. Not to cut you off, but right now their LAFC's below the line for the first time in franchise history. So, they're gonna throw everything they have at it for sure.
I'm gonna throw out some names real quick because I gotta go help. My wife just texted me and said our baby is stronger than me and has a death wish, so he's probably trying to crawl off the bed. I like Tati. I like Shabilko. I like Russell. I really wanted some Sporting Kansas City coverage this week, and I think Russell has some of the consistency that I want. Also got Kamara, not sure. Dallas, maybe, not sure about their consistency. Joseph Martinez, I'm worried about his consistency as well. And DK's name I threw out there, I kind of thought about him, but I don't know about those. I like these other matchups better, but I do like those guys. And so I'm going to bounce you all. Keep going, and if that's all that I end up being able to do for tonight, just so everyone knows, good luck, as always.
And then actually, right before you jump in, one last name that I'm going to throw out there is kind of my other one to fill Reid's spot too. Is I think you could go with Klimala as a safe option this week as well. DC and then Montreal at home. I think those are good ones. Klimala has been playing well lately. He's on PKs. He's had a good scoring consistency to him.
Sure.
So 2 games, I expect a goal somewhere in those 2 games. And I'm not seeing a ton of double goal guys or 2 scoring action guys this week. I'm really struggling behind Tati and Shabilko and maybe Russell. I'm struggling to find where 2 goals are coming from. And that's where my Russell pick is into. He's just been so consistent on 1 and maybe an assist if they really get it going. So I think Klimala is definitely in play this week. He's usually only a 1 scoring action guy. But I think that's the best you're going to get, so you're going to take the best chances you have for a single scoring action guy.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm here.
So the players that I like to pick out of my team are Tati Frisb, and then I'm looking at Ferreira for Dallas. I just liked them this weekend. They seem to really click even without Pepe, which was interesting. I'm not going to take Johnny Russell, but every game he's scored in all of his 7, it's just a goal in minutes, and he's only gotten more than 7 points in 2 of those last 7 games. So for me, and a lot of it's because of the players around him, so he's not always the only one scoring. I feel like Sporting spreads the wealth really well. And without Polino and without Shallowy, I think most goals are going to come through him. But I'm not super sold on it. I like Dallas is out of the playoffs. They have nothing to lose. So I'm inclined to like this. This is a bench spot for me too. This isn't someone I'm starting. I like Reid's shout for DK. I don't know what to make of Orlando. I am interested in Ola Kamara, but again, I don't know what to make of what happened to DC this past weekend and how seriously to take that. But I think Ola is a good look as well. And then if you want to throw a differential out there, with a home game against Orlando and then going to DC, who may or may not be leaking goals, we're not totally sure. Barry for Columbus is who will play with Zardes hurt, and that kid has put in goals when he's been starting. He's no one's first pick. I think even just calling him a differential is a reach. But we haven't given Columbus any coverage this week, which is just because they've been inconsistent. It's not necessarily like a knock on us, but he's who's going to play. I'm assuming with Zardes out. It's not something I want to touch, but I think if you're trying to do something kind of crazy, I think that's an interesting team to go to for strikers and maybe for middies too.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's not. Go ahead.
You said his name, and I can't do DK.
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
Columbus. Well, it's not even that he burned me. I'd love to see him do well, but Columbus has been getting their defenders back. Wormcore's been starting. Wormcore and Mensa is a formidable pair. That's a road game.
Yep.
The wingbacks don't really matter in that squad quite as much. They rotate those guys anyway. I don't like that. And then you're talking about Nashville.
Yeah. Two other formidable center backs.
Yeah.
If they don't rotate.
Nashville's leading the league in clean sheets this year. They're getting them on the road almost more than at home.
Sure.
Like at home they press a little bit more. On the road they just bunker and they say if you can't beat us, we only need to poach a goal and we're done.
Yeah.
Like
the only counter to that I would say, I completely agree with you about Nashville, but they rotated their second game of this last double game week significantly. So if you put big, strong Daryl DK up against two rotated center backs and a rotated defense, I think that's the only game worth looking at, but that's the second game. So it's not even worth waiting for, if that makes sense. But
I can't endorse DK, and I know Reid put him on his list as a guy to talk about, but I don't think that's a helpful shout out at that point. I would rather go Bill Bruin than
he's gonna play
than DK this week. I don't trust it enough.
I wish Reid was here to hear you say that.
Yeah, and I know chat's talking about him because you said Ferreira, which I love that shout. I know somebody else is talking about, do we go Ferreira? Do we go O'Brien? Pepe came in off the bench. There's rumor of a potential injury. Maybe transfer stuff is going there, and they just wanted to cameo him and keep him fresh if they keep him.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up, but I'm going to say proceed with caution with Pepe.
Yes, definitely.
Any day now, there could be news of a transfer break.
Yep.
I don't know if all the leagues are shut down where they can't transfer, but if they're keeping him healthy for a transfer and only trying to keep his fitness up by playing him a little bit, just watch out for that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a fluke. If you see him start the RSL game on Wednesday and you want to go with him, like absolutely go with him. I'm not gonna bag on Pepe. He's been solid.
Yep, America's striker.
Yeah, I do think Dallas is a little bit of scoring by committee. Some weeks it's Ferreira, some weeks it's
Yara.
Sometimes it's Yara on the bench. Like there seems like there's a brace in every game, but you can't pick who it is.
Sure.
So I say proceed with caution with Dallas in general.
Sure.
But especially with Pepe because there is some rotation and some rest issues there going on.
Yep.
Saying Pepe may have had a cut on his foot that kept him out, so we'll just have to see.
Okay.
But proceed with caution with Dallas. I don't think you're wrong in looking at Dallas this week. But just be careful with that one because of rotation.
All we have left really to talk about is captains. We didn't have a ton of switcher options. I feel like we kind of covered that in the body of things. But I'll go first because I typed something out. I'm captaining Barco or Moreno this week. I'm leaning towards Barco as well for my Atlanta midfielder. I think there's some other good captain shouts. I think Tati's an interesting captain shout. I'm I don't know if I think Krylak has a lot of legs to it. We do tend to talk about middies when we talk about captains, but I'm definitely leaning towards Barco or an Atlanta midfielder as my captain choice for this week.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, that's one of the names that's popped across my list is going Barco. I wish we had a little more consistency from Monteiro because he would be my easy captain pick.
Sure.
Somebody ran the numbers and he hasn't quite hit double digits since coming back, but his numbers are up there for, like I said, not getting on the score sheet as much. We're not seeing him get the production, but the fantasy points are there. If he ever turns that back into goals and assists, watch out because he's right back on top.
Sure.
And this could be the week he does it. That's what's giving me pause. Like, part of me just wants to go Monteiro full bore and just let it go. I think Tati's probably my forward shout. Just if you're trying to make up ground, if you need to make some moves, you're looking for big scores, and you're going to gamble on a forward. I think Tati gets it. Shabilko has been close to multiple scoring actions lately, but I'm talking to some Philly fans, and they're calling him a very selfish player. He could have probably had 3 assists last week, but he went for goal himself, and so yeah, you kind of gotta worry about that when you get into these games. If he ever just gets a little bit more team oriented and passes the ball, I think his value would go way up. But then again, this is the same setup that just saw Miami score 8 goals, so it's kind of hard to ignore that matchup. Yeah. I think you're between Atlanta and Philly though, unless you go Tati, which Tati would be a great shout this week to make some moves. I'm undecided. Because I'm out of Champions League, I may just go Monteiro and see if I can make up some ground in the overall standings and just have some fun with it, because I like that Philly matchup way too much.
Hey, go Wagner. He scores more than Monty does right now. Well, we've never had to end without Reid, so I'm not really sure what to say now because
what plugs do you have?
What?
What plugs do you have?
Oh, I don't have. It's gonna sound so cheesy again, but I want to plug Spence. He was 4th for the round last week. Just he's not crushing Champions League in the way that I think most people would like. I think he's like 71st or something.
Yeah.
But I'm just really impressed with his second half of the season. So I'll plug that guy who lives with me, Spencer, my husband.
Yeah.
You got plugs? I don't have any.
Not really. No plugs this week. Our draft league is winding down. We're hitting up the finals. I know we've got some people in chat that are playing. I know we've got Tyler Ranch is in the final for his league. I just got bumped up to the final in my league. Playing against a guy, Geostorm, from the Discord server, so that's going to be a fun matchup. If you want to get in on draft, just check us out on Discord. We've got a draft channel. Ask one of the admins to get in there if you're not. And we're looking at possibly expanding next year and adding a 4th league because there's been enough Discord interest. So if you are interested in playing, let us know. Yeah. And I think it's a good segue to the plugs Reid would normally have. Look him up, MLSFantasyBoss.com, at MLSFantasyBoss on Twitter, and the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. We're getting really close to 1,000 people, so invite your friends. Let's see if we can hit that 1,000 mark at the end of the season. Yeah. It'll be a great way to finish out the year. And Reid already said it, but just to make sure everybody's got it, good luck this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a good second to last round. Stop talking.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could Reid a pause so he knows where to cut it.
No, I know.
The man with all the power is gone.
Yep.
So we're here broadcasting YouTube with nobody to cut us off. So it's really
this is Reid's worst nightmare.
Yeah, whatever content comes up is MLS Fantasy Insider After Dark. Let's see. I'll go in public on YouTube right now.
Yeah, Reid will be really excited about that. He'll burst and he'll, having to rein in his second children, you and me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a buzzkill and just go put my kid to bed, I guess.
Okay. I can stay with chat for a while. I mean, that's fine with me. I'll wait till
you can do a AMA with the YouTube chat right now.
Yeah, that's fine. So I will be around for a little bit.
This is your time to really get in on the Blayne riffle and just ask the questions you've always wanted to ask.
Need a poll though. Tyler posted a picture in the club.
Uh-huh.
It's a very patchy, scraggly beard that's just starting to come in, and he said, "Do I keep it or do I shave?"
Okay, I'm checking.
And I'm always team every beard needs love. So
yeah, I was going to say.
Patchy, scraggly, whatever it is, any beard is better than no beard.
I like it.
You should show the camera if you've got it on your phone.
He did. Well, it's like I don't think it's going to go well because it'll pixel.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good. Also, Tyler might not have wanted us to pull that on here. I didn't think about that before I showed it. I like it. I vote yes, keep. That's my vote. Hi, Lily.
Are we done?
We're talking about beards, but yes, we're done.